you to the cafeteria at this time.
Oh. It's just.
On the first one, did you start by doing A times C? Earth to Christian? Man, y'all are lucky I didn't put this one in the classroom for a grade today, it looks like. Not anything new, you can do it. Alright, on the first one here, tell me what you got for A times C. Okay, so I need two numbers that multiply to get -30, but my B is -1, so they gotta add to get -1. So what two numbers would satisfy that?
5 and -6.
Okay, so we're gonna plug those in our factors. Now remember that? Now I just set each of those equal to 0 and solve. So we would get a -5 and a +6. What's the matter? Come on.
I got x equals 6.
Well, you got one of them. How come you didn't get the -5?
So what I did was I put 30 on the other side, then I put the x on the other side, and then I knew that
You saw that like 36 was a perfect square, and it was 6, so I knew that the x
But where do you even get a 36 from? There's,
Well, I
Yeah,
saw
what?
I saw an x squared on the left side, and then x plus 30, and they're equal to each other. So I was,
oh lordy, you're
Yeah.
you're inventing new methods and
your brain
Something's
kind of went
wrong.
offline there for a minute. You had the Bing search of math.
okay. So on the second one down here, it just said find the product, so it's just wanting you to multiply. And both of these problems, if we were to hook these together, is gonna lead into today's lesson. Because we spent the majority of last week factoring these, and our A was always 1. And so I told you this week we were gonna look at what to do when your A is not 1. So that's what we're gonna see down here when we multiply this one out. So the factoring will get a little bit more complicated, but distribute your 4y to your 3y. I have a 12y squared. And then my 4y to my 8 will get me a 32y. Now I'm gonna distribute my -3, so -3 to 3y would be -9y. And then -3 to 8 would be -24. So you combine your like terms there. So we have a 12y squared plus
23.
thank you, brain for me. 23y minus 24. So that would be your product, that's your answer. So what we were gonna learn to do today is go from here with a that's not 1 to here. So we're gonna do this backwards today, okay? Got a couple still writing, and then I'll erase that so I can
Is
use
that-
it next period.
Is that 24 on the very end?
Yes, 24, my bad, that's not the Y kinda. Let's see if I can erase that stuff out of there. Fabulous. I've got to change to a black marker now. 5x squared minus 17x plus 6. And our directions say to factor. Okay, just factor is all we're gonna start with. Now, like I was just saying a second ago, we did this all last week when that a was a 1. But now the a is not a 1 anymore. So it's a little bit more involved in our factoring process, a little bit. We're gonna love factoring when our a is 1, not so much when the a is another number. Takes a few more steps. One thing that I didn't emphasize with you last week, and I should have, because we're gonna have to start looking for it today. Our first step, anytime we're factoring, is always gotta be to look for a greatest common factor, a GCF. And I didn't emphasize that at all last week. In this problem, there is no GCF other than 1, because you got a 5, it just is 1 and 5, but 1 or 5 won't go into 17, right, and 5 won't go into 6. So there's no GCF, but we're gonna have to start checking for that, okay? So once we figure out there's no GCF, our process is gonna be the same as last week. We're still gonna do a times c. 5 times 6 is positive 30. So same so far. I need the factors of positive 30 that add to my b, which is negative 17,
Negative 2, negative 2.
okay? And I didn't list all the factors of 30 out that time because the fellas knew them, but if you don't know them, remember how we did last week, write them all out and then just start checking them. So negative 15 times negative 2 is positive 30, negative 15 plus negative 2 is negative 17. Okay, now here's where it's different. When we got to this step, when the a was 1, we just wrote our 2 parentheses and plugged in those factors and you were done. But you don't get to do that now. When your a is not 1, these factors are going to substitute in for that middle term. So I'm going to rewrite this as 5x squared, but instead of negative 17x, I'm going to put my factors that give me a negative 17x. So I'm going to bring the 5x squared down, and now minus 15x and minus 2x plus 6. Okay, I've not changed the value of this at all, because what is negative 15 minus 2?
Negative 17.
So, math legal so far. Don't call the math police yet. All right, now, this is where it's called what we call factoring by grouping. Because we just went from a trinomial, remember what these things are called? 1, 2, 3, a trinomial, to 4 terms. I like to say quadranomial, but that's not a real math word, I just say that. 1, 2, 3, 4. So when you have 4, what we're going to do, factor by grouping, we're going to group those 2 by 2, just like we're going in the arc. So I'm going to put a parentheses around the first 2 and a parentheses around the last 2. Okay? Now, let's look at our first group we just made. We're gonna attack it first. And that 5x squared minus 15x. Is there a GCF there, a greatest common factor here?
3.
No, 3 won't go evenly into 5.
5.
5, what else? Don't they also both have an x? Right? So I could divide both of these evenly by 5x. Okay, so I'm gonna bring my, when you divide like this, it's like you're backwards distributing, so I'm gonna bring that out of the parentheses. Okay, so what is, if I had a 5x squared and I factored out a 5x, what would be left?
Square.
5x.
Close,
Another 5x.
no? Complete up here on, think of taking your bicycle apart, the complete part had a 5x squared. We took the 5 off of it and we took an x off of it. What's left? No? And it's not bad the way you're thinking that, but that means you might not understand squares.
Times 5x.
That's what 5x squared means, right? Right? 5x squared means 5 times x, right? We took the 5 out, we took an x out, what's left?
And x.
There we go. Is that clear as mud right there? Alright, so we took 5x away from this, so we have an x left. Bring down your minus sign. Now it was a 15x, but we factored a 5x out. So what would be left to go here? What's 15 divided by 5? And we took that x, the whole thing out, so you're done with that one. Alright. Now you can do a little mental check there. Make sure you haven't messed anything up. 5x times x. Yeah. 5x times negative 3. Yeah. Okay, so now we need to take the GCF out of the second parentheses. What did 2x and 6 have in common? 2. Now let's look at the signs in it. What I want to happen after I take the GCF out of this parentheses, I want to get identical to this. So what kind of 2 could I take out of this that would make it identical? Okay, so let's factor a negative 2 out. They both don't have an x, so I've noticed I didn't take an x, right? Okay, so what's negative 2x divided by negative 2?
X.
Just an x is left. And look, that's what we had over here. So far, so good. What's 6 divided by negative 2?
Negative 3.
Negative 3. Okay, it's crazy, but we're almost there. This line that we just wrote right here is one big function, just got a couple of parentheses in it. So I wonder, does this one big function have something that's identical in it? Have a greatest common factor,
1.
other than 1. Everything's always gonna have 1.
X and negative 3.
Okay, they both have that whole binomial, don't they? So now for this line here, that whole binomial is gonna be a GCF. So I'm gonna take it out. So I'm taking out that binomial. So right here on this side, it had a 5x and an x minus 3. Already took the x minus 3 out. So 5x is all that's left. Over here on this side, I already took the x minus 3 out. So negative 2 is all that's left. That's your final answer. Don't worry, we're going to practice this a gazillion.
This is where I get lost in algebra.
Oh, this is not bad at all. Just so you know, and I tell my classes this every year, when we started solving last week, I told you there's lots of ways to solve a quadratic. Factoring is my favorite, but if I were working on my own and somebody gave me this problem and told me to solve it, I would use a different method. I wouldn't do this. So it's not the end of the world that you don't get it, but it's a good skill to have, and you know, could come in handy.
Is the other one faster?
No, it's got more steps. But we'll see them all and you can decide what you think is best for you. Let's try another one, because these are fun. How about 3x squared plus 20x minus 7? Alright, so first thing, the directions are still just factor. We're gonna use it to solve, hopefully by the end of the lesson today, but right now just as factor. So first thing to check for is, do all three of those terms have anything other than 1 in common? Is there a greatest common factor other than 1? No, because 3 won't go into 7, so you don't have anything there. So then you go ahead and you check your A times C. 3 times negative 7. It's negative 21. I need the factors of negative 21 that when I add them, I get a positive 20. Do we need to list them or we know them?
21 negative 4.
Okay, Christian's good on that. 21 times negative 1 is negative 21. 21 plus negative 1 is positive 20. Okay, so now here's where the new steps from last week came in. Now we're going to take those and we're going to substitute them in for the 20x. So I'm going to say 3x squared plus 21x minus 1x, so I just substituted them in, and then bring down the minus 7. So that was a new step there, that substitution step. Now this next step is also a new one. We made 4 terms. 4 terms, you gotta group them 2 by 2, just like we're going in the arc. So throw your parentheses. We okay? After we made 2 groups, we're gonna factor out the GCF, the greatest common factor. So my first parentheses here, what will go evenly, let's just do the numbers first. What will go evenly into 3 and 21?
3.
3. Then what about a variable? Do they both have at least an x?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're gonna take a 3x out. Alright, it seems like this is where the majority of the confusion came last time. It was a 3x squared. I took a 3x away. So what's left to go in my parentheses? An x, very good. Bring down my plus sign. 21, if I divided it by 3, what's left? 7. And I took the x out, so I'm done with that, right? Okay, now remember, in order for this whole thing to work, like we saw in the last problem, we want to end up with this common. So we want to have this both times, right? So looking at this now, if I just looked at the numbers, 1 and 7, there's nothing other than a 1. But it wouldn't look just like this. So I could take a negative 1 out. Good, Christian. So a negative divided by a negative makes that a positive. A negative divided by a negative makes that a positive. Okay, so once you get to that point, it's just understanding how to write your answer. You look and see, okay, even though it's a big common factor, both sides have that. So I'm going to take that out, that binomial, so I'm going to have an x plus 7. I took the x plus 7 away from this, so all that's left is the 3x. And I took the x plus 7 away from that, so all that's left is the minus 1.
It gets simpler every time.
So
It
we're
takes
getting
practice.
intercept form.
Say that again, sir?
So we're getting intercept form from.
Well, what we're gonna add on at the end, hopefully then, is we would take those and set them equal to 0 and solve. So yes, it would be intercept form. Good thing. cause y'all are getting better. Did we not already do that one? No, I'll just flip them around, that'll be a good one for you to try. 7x squared minus 20x minus 3. And this one's very similar to the one we just did. So I want you to, I'm gonna be quiet and let you try it. See how far you can get. I've not finished mine yet, but I've started. So if you're stuck, you might check and see if we did that part the same. Okay, so I'm ready to group. Are y'all ready to group, or are y'all already just waiting on, see if you got it all right? What's the GCF of my first group? 7, and what else? Good. What's left inside when I take a 7x away? X and what else?
Negative 3.
Good. Now here's where this one is easy but tricky. You already have, remember we're looking for the same thing twice, and it's already the same thing twice. But I can't just bring it down with nothing else. So I told Christian earlier that ones don't count. This is a time when a 1 counts, because that's going to make a difference. So the only thing they have in common there is a 1, so I'm going to bring out a positive 1, and then I'm ready to write my answer. I got that common, so I take it out. And then I'm left with a 7x, and that's why that 1 is important this time, because it's a part of that binomial. Good job.
Does it matter which order the?
No, the parentheses can go in either order.
So it could be 7x plus 1,
Uh-huh.
x minus 1.
Good job, good job. Okay, we looked at something like this last week when the A was 1. but now the a is not one. 9x squared minus 64, the directions say factor. I think we probably, sometime last week, did this exact same problem if that was just a 1. Didn't we use the 64 sometimes? And 64 is a special kind of number because it was a perfect square. Isn't 9 a perfect square also? So we're still gonna do this the same way. We got a perfect square, and a minus sign. So if we remember, we talked about that being called the difference of squares. In the difference of squares, we ended up in 2 binomials like that, right? And all we did was square rooted our terms. So what's the square root of 9x squared?
3.
3 what? So I put a 3x in both of them. What's the square root of 64?
8.
So I put an 8 in both of them. And that was the way we did it with the shortcut. Now, could I have still done the a times c stuff? Yes. Would have been harder for me because I don't know what 9 times 64 is off the top of my head. But you then would have done that same process. Find the factors of whatever that is that add to 0 because you don't have a b, your b is 0.
When did we learn this shortcut?
Well, I mean, that was the type of problem we were doing. Oh, no. Okay, so that was, alright, now, we're getting there, y'all are hanging good. We talked about something here. Alright, so I don't have a b again. 5x squared minus 45, the directions just say the factor. I don't have a b again. So you're thinking, I wonder if I can do difference of squares like on the last problem. And my answer is not yet. Not yet, because 5 is not a perfect square. There's not a whole number times itself that makes 5. 45 is not a perfect square. There's not a whole number times itself that makes 45. But I told you today that we always got to check for a greatest common factor first. So do those two terms have a greatest common factor? So let's take that out. What is it? Okay, so let's undistribute and divide both of these terms by 5. So what do I have left here if I divide it, I take that 5 out?
X.
X squared, I didn't take any x's out, so it's still squared. I got a minus, and now what's 45 divided by 5?
9.
Okay, now sometimes you factored your GCF out, fabulous job, you're done. Sometimes it can factor farther. So what do you think here? Can my binomial factor any farther? Yes. X squared's a perfect square, 9's a perfect square. What multiplies to make negative 9 but adds to 0? A positive 3 and a negative 3. I want to do one more similar to that, but I'll make it have a B, and then we'll do what Christian's been anxious to do and solve these things. Christian's like, I don't need baby stuff, let's just solve it. Alright, so let me give you one that's got a GCF and a B. Let's look at 8x squared plus 38x minus 10. Okay, so direction set a factor. Do not just jump right in and do a times c and get negative 80. That is the right a times c, but I told you we gotta check for a GCF. So first thing I should notice is that all those numbers are even. So I know I'm gonna have at least a 2 to bring out. I think that's it. I don't think.
No.
So 2 is what we're gonna factor? Okay, so we're gonna, when you factor it out, you just put it outside your parentheses. And now it's like we're backwards distributed. So we're just gonna go down the line and divide each of those by 2. Okay, so it was 8x squared, I divided it by 2. So I got a 4x squared, right? It was 38x, I divided it by 2. Is that 19? 19x, is that right? It was -10, but I divided it by 2, so I got a -5. Okay, so you can see that's just 2 times 4x squared, 2 times 19x, so it's just backwards distributed property. Now, sometimes you'll be lucky and be done there, sometimes you won't. So what we have to do now is see if this new trinomial that we came up with can factor any farther. If it can, we gotta keep going, if not, we're done. So to check it, we'll do our 4 times -5, or a times c. Are there any factors of -20 that add to a positive 19? What are they? 20 and -1. So I'm gonna put my 2 out there in a highlighter, because it's gonna be part of my answer. So that'll just help me remember it, and I'll bring it later, okay? So I'm gonna substitute these dudes in where they go. So I'm gonna have a 4x squared plus 20x minus 1x minus 5. And right here, y'all were talking about what order you put them in earlier. This could be switched also. You could have put -x plus 20x, but sometimes you just need to, as you write it, you need to be kind of thinking about the pairs in your head. Like I know 4 and 20 have a GC, I'm trying to think ahead on that for my grouping, so let's go ahead and group them. What's the GCF of your first group? 4x. So what's left in that parentheses if you take that 4x out?
X.
X, what else?
5.
Positive 5. Okay, so what am I gonna do to this second one that will also leave me with a positive x and a positive 5? What can I take out of that?
Negative.
Good. So negative by negative is a positive, negative by negative is a positive. Okay, so now on that whole big line, x plus 5 is a common factor, so take it out. And then you'll be left with a 4x and a minus 1. Can I circle that? Is that a good answer?
Please dismiss the juniors to the cafeteria at this time.
To the cafe, Hayden. What have I not done? No, I'm not solving this one yet.
Oh,
I highlighted it to remind myself.
oh.
Bring that 2 down to the party. It's still one of the factors. So there's your final answer. Can you wait just a little bit? Can you take it out? We're close, so. All right. So Christian, I'm ready here when you are. Are you ready? Solve. Okay. It's the Jostens people, so we're junior, what do juniors do with Jostens senior rings?
Are we gonna get lettermans? We get lettermans. We can get lettermans into the paper.
3x squared plus 10x minus 8 equals 0. Okay, so notice that when we solve an equation. So they're gonna throw you, you're gonna have an equal sign. All those rest of them, we were just simplifying or factoring. They weren't equations because there was no equal sign. They were just expressions, right? Okay, so we're gonna solve this, but we solve it the same way that we've been doing it. We gotta factor them, get them down to those intercepts and solve them. So we're gonna start with our a times c. I got a -24. I need the factors of -24 that add to 10. It took me a minute to think of
12
them.
and
Yeah,
-2.
y'all are faster. I was struggling with that one for a second. 12 and -2. So I'm gonna substitute those in now. Okay. So the directions changed to solve, but we're not doing anything different yet. Now we've got 4 terms, so we group them 2 by 2. Now you're looking in your groups for a GCF, a greatest common factor. What do I have here?
3.
3 what? Good. So that leaves you a binomial of what?
X.
X. What else?
Four.
Plus
X.
4, because it's positive. What am I gonna take out of the second parentheses? What's its GCF?
-2.
Good. What does that leave me with?
X plus
Good. Now, on this whole big line, you got a GCF of x plus 4. So you have left a 3x and a minus 2. Okay, so nothing was new until, up until there. Now you've got an addition, this is where the additional steps come in, because we're told to solve. So now we just take all those factors we got, whoops, set them equal to 0 and solve them both. That's why last week, when it was A was 1, you could just take the opposite sign, but I kept warning you to be careful because that's not always gonna be the case. So on this one, it is, but I'll go ahead and show that step, subtract the 4. So we got a -4. Now over here, this is a 2-step middle school equation. So I would add my 2 first. That would get me 3x is equal to 2, but now I got one more thing to do to it. Good, my x being multiplied by 3, so I'm gonna divide by 3. So I got -4 and 2/3. Not too shabby, hey?
I hope I don't forget when we're doing it all, you know?
Well, that'll be tomorrow, you know, good old virtual day. All right, let's do another one together.
Put another dog in there tomorrow.
You just make up a new way. He's like,
Christian's
well,
gonna be over here squaring negatives and
Dog Aristotle.
he'll square a negative and get a odd number.
okay, we're gonna do this one together, and I added some steps on this one. Says 5x squared minus 16x plus 15 equals 4x minus 5. So what did I do? It's directions are solved.
Not equal 0.
Right, it's not equal to 0. We got other junk over here. So first step, if we're not equal to 0, is we gotta make ourselves equal to 0. So to do that, to get rid of a 4x, I can subtract it from itself and from its buddy on the other side. But I also gotta get rid of minus 5. So I'm gonna add it to itself and its buddy on the other side. Okay, so it gets me, bring down the 5x squared. What's negative 16x minus 4x?
Negative 20x.
Yes, sir, Reedy. And then 15 plus 5 is also 20. Over here, 4x and negative 4x, that's nothing, he gone. Negative 5 and 5, that's nothing, he gone. So all I have over there now is a 0. Okay, so we got a trinomial. Now, this is like the granddaddy today, because this is combining all the stuff that we looked at. Do not do A times C yet. Why?
Great.
It's got a greatest common factor still, so I can factor a 5 out of all that. So I took the 5 out, I just got an x squared left. Negative 20x divided by 5. 20 divided by 5. Okay, so now in my trinomial in the parentheses, a times c, 1 times 4, what multiplies to make positive 4 but adds to make a negative 4?
Negative 2.
Negative 2 and negative 2. Now look, I don't have to do the 2 by 2 this time. Right? Because this A that I'm working with right now is a 1. So this piece that we're factoring is just like last week. We don't have to do the 2 by 2. I'm going to bring that 5 down. Right? Y'all following the difference there?
Oh.
Because this was an understood one,
So
so I
that should be
just,
the answer.
yeah. So now to write my answer, set those equal to 0 and solve, so x minus 2 equals 0 gives me an x equals 2. This one is also 2, right, because they're the same. So, that's it. Now, here's the question, what about the 5?
Bring it down.
Mm-mm.
No.
We set, what we're essentially doing, let me get a new color, what we're essentially doing is setting, that was useless, I dragged that and it still popped. Setting all our factors equal to 0 and solving. So x minus 2 equals 0, x minus 2 equals 0. That is good, sound math.
Easiest one.
Hold on, yeah, you're right. So my other factor is a 5. So that would say 5 equals 0. And right, that's dumb. That is not good math. So that's why you don't bring that down. So I call that a dummy answer. You just kick your dummy answer out. No bedtime snack, hit the road, Jack. Okay? Alright, so y'all tell me, since y'all are the class of decision. For your virtual day tomorrow, I've toyed with 2 things. First one is a quiz over just factoring. So it'll have some mixtures of an A that's 1, the easy ones, and an A that's not 1. Or I was looking through the Lincoln Learning lesson on factoring this morning. What would y'all rather do? Have any of your classes done Lincoln Learning yet?
You got buzz?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I'll
So-
rather do buzz.
You would rather do the buzz?
Well, the factoring on quizzes, that's just my opinion.
Well,
I can't
here's
speak for
my,
everyone else.
and that's why I was asking you if any of your classes have used the buzz yet. My fear, and I'm not sick, I've not been sick, so, but my fear is if something happens and I get sent home and I just suddenly give y'all the buzz and you've not done one yet,
Mm-hmm.
that you're gonna kinda panic. So it might be a good idea for me to do that. That's what I'm
Yeah, I
thinking.
would do.
Okay.
One of my classes, we only do buzz, like
Maybe
we do
just
the
do
class
nap
work,
time.
it's just buzz.
I
That
agree
would
with
get
that.
annoying.
We should do nap time.
Well, after you finish your buzz. Okay, so tomorrow, unless I change my mind, I don't let the other classes vote. Y'all are the small class that I let vote. Tomorrow, unless I change my mind, your virtual assignment will be through buzz. And I'll type into Google Classroom telling you about it. But, all right, good job today.